Arkansas, the third state to be actively using gas suffocation as a method of execution. We'll have a bit more to say about that in a little bit, but for now, welcome. I want to just note for the people that are that are watching with us who are not members of the media, this is a press event, and we are going to be taking questions from members of the media. We invite people to introduce yourselves in the chat, but also note that if anybody is putting in inappropriate messages in the chat, we'll be restricting that opportunity. So just to put that out. So we're grateful that you're all with us, and thank you. We'll be starting in just a moment.
Again, you want to stand in 2 minutes? Sure, okay. Ibrahim, J.A. All right, come on. Coordinating, come on. Carolyn, you want to come up here?
It's the speaker.
No, it's an everybody. I don't know. Someone who everybody's speaking, those that are speaking. If anybody else wants to speak, Eugene, Jack. Okay, y'all stood over. I'm about ready. Hold on. Okay, perfect. Perfect, guys. Y'all supposed to help us set up. Abe, how we looking?
It looks great. Thanks everybody for being there, and we're grateful to be with you in Little Rock, and we're ready to get going. We've got about 20 people watching, including members of the media.
All right, I'm going to bring you closer so I can actually. Am I in your way? This way? Okay. I want to make sure he can hear us. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are here at an interesting moment. You know, I could go on and on talking to Courtney about this yesterday, but it does seem like government is getting much bigger. And when government gets bigger, it seems that crazy things start to happen. Like strapping a mask on someone and gassing them until they can't breathe anymore. I wanted to quickly point out that we have our friends from Death Penalty Action with us today. Death Penalty Action is a national organization, at times international organization, that works against the death penalty, and they are partnering with the Execution Intervention Project, which is an organization that also works on the death penalty nationally, but primarily works on spiritual accompaniment and a lot of the work that I do. I wanted to just quickly get us started by having a number of people come and speak. I think it's important that everyone know that these folks, we didn't call politicians, we didn't call a bunch of pastors, although we got one. We called, we wanted normal people. And I think a lot of times, y'all are all quite normal. No, they're extraordinarily normal. But I think a lot of times when we do these, we hear from a lot of people who quote unquote matter. And I think what we want to show today is that not just everybody matters, but again, the voices of common folk matter, and they're opposed to gassing people to death. So with that said, I think I'm gonna, Mark, you be all right going first? I wanted to briefly introduce Mark. Mark and I met at the swimming pool. We both were members of Walnut Valley Swimming Pool before the tornado happened. And Mark was hitting on me. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, Mark, come on up, introduce yourself. If you could spell your name, say, maybe a sentence or two about who you are, spell your name, have that.
Hi, I'm Mark Barnes, Mark, M-A-R-K-B-A-R-N-E-S, and said a few words that I wanted to say. The poet Ghalib wrote, "It is easy to be human, very hard to be humane." I think about that line a lot. I have no specific skill or experience that qualifies me as an expert on the death penalty. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor or a politician. I'm just a human. And as a human, I believe that I have a choice to make every minute, every day of my life. To either give in to my base instincts and desires, or to be humane. To show grace and mercy and compassion in a world where those traits are radically undervalued. Governor Sanders, you faced one of those decisions earlier this year, and you made the choice to approve nitrogen gas executions in our state. I appeal to you to reverse this decision on the basis of humaneness and on the basis of the faith that you profess. I'm not naive. I understand that many prisoners on death row have committed terrible crimes. This is not an issue of their innocence or guilt. This is an issue of justice. Execution is not justice. It is retribution. It does not end or prevent violence. It perpetuates it. It does not repay the debt of a lost life. It does not provide solace or closure. And in the case of those who have been wrongly convicted by our imperfect justice system, it leaves all of our hands stained with the blood of the innocent. If that isn't enough, perhaps some words from Scripture will help. In Matthew 5:7, famous Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." We are called to be merciful, to rise above our desire for vengeance. In John 8:7, responding to a group of men who were prepared to stone a woman to death for a crime, Jesus says, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." None of us have the right to throw that first stone, or in this case, to start a flow of gas that will horrifically suffocate another human being slowly until they die. Governor Sanders, it is not too late to make the humane choice, the Christ-like choice, to show mercy by repealing the approval of nitrogen gas execution in our state. Thank you.
All right, next, I want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Michael Ford, who is going to briefly talk about certainly nitrogen gas, but also give a perspective of somebody who's lived in the state for a very long time, has a lot of history with this state.
Thank you. My name is Michael Ford, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-O-R-R. And I'm glad that you all are here today, that we can talk about a very important subject that leaves very little room for error. And once something is done, it's not going to be undone. It terrifies me to realize that when a state begins to take away the gift of life, they will not stop taking other rights away. And then we begin to start looking at the ways to do it. We've chosen a very barbaric, very heinous sort of way to execute people. I'm a United Methodist. I know there are many faith groups in our state, around our country, and our world that are opposed to the death penalty. We count ourselves among that group. There was an instance several years ago where an elderly lady was murdered in a church as she was preparing communion at the table on a Saturday afternoon for the next Sunday morning's service. She was the only one in the building. It was a church that was out of the country. Someone came in the church, accosted her, and murdered her. He was caught. He was tried. He was sentenced. He was sentenced to death. Actually, no, he was sentenced. And the prosecuting attorney was talking with the family about the death penalty. Their recommendation, they said, was this: as a United Methodists, we are opposed to the death penalty. It is enough justice for life without parole. Fortunately, that attorney chose their choice and asked for life without parole. I think that all of us would agree that this method of execution is fearful, it is heinous, and it is painful. There's only one person that I know of in the state of Arkansas that has witnessed a gas execution, and he stands with us today. When our legislative committee was talking about enacting this, and taking a vote, the attorney for Department of Corrections in the committee said that this was a painless and a quick way of executing someone without any references or without any research to back that up. Tragically say, our legislatures listen to him and not those who are speaking not to enact. As our previous Mark said, I would ask our governor to rescind this particular bill and do the right thing to the price. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Next, I wanted to invite Ibrahim, another good friend of mine. Again, we're bringing folks in from all areas of activism and spaces in the city. Ibrahim has been leading the protests against what is happening in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza. So I wanted to invite him to come and say a few words from his perspective.
Hi everyone, my name is Ibrahim Abu Nasra, E-B-R-A-H-I-M. Last name is A-B-U-N-A-S-R-A-H. When I think about death, It's a very scary subject. When I think about someone on death row, that's an even scarier subject. And when I think about what Jesus would think about that, Jesus thought about love, compassion. Jesus thought about forgiveness. And when I think about Arkansas and what we're trying to do as a state to become more innovative, to bring technology in, this is not the right technology to bring in. We should be focusing on other things other than trying to find new and innovative ways to try to kill people. That should be our focus. And I think if Jesus were here today, he would just question our government. He would question the people running our government in Arkansas, who are, by the way, pro-life. He would ask, why are you trying to find different ways to kill people? You need to be investing in people, and love, and compassion, and making their lives better. It's not our job to judge people. That's God's job to judge people. And so I just hope our government will live in the life of Jesus and follow the paths he will take and stop this heinous and horrible way of trying to kill people and invest in technology, invest in people, and stop trying to find different ways to kill people.
Next, I wanted to invite my new friend, Courtney. Courtney organized a No Kings protest, and she said that she was going to get us a couple thousand people in here. But just kidding. But no, I wanted to welcome her and really, again, appreciate those who are doing some grassroots organizing.
Hi, my name is Courtney Maxwell, COURTNEYMAXWELL. I am one of the project managers for the People's Protests and Marches and 5051 Arkansas. If you're familiar with that, we are heavy on the white fascism. Back in November, I started a book club where we read banned books. So for the last 9 months, I've been reading banned books about fascism and how different fascist leaders came into power. For the last 20 years, I have studied the Holocaust and Nazi Germany. This is not propaganda. This is history, and we are watching it happen again, but this time in our own country. Why am I mentioning fascism here at a press conference for the use of nitrogen gas executions? Well, fascism thrives on dehumanization. In Mussolini's Italy, Hitler's Germany, Franco's Spain, the pattern was clear. First, label people as enemies, criminals, or undesirables. Then strip away their rights. Then remove them from public life entirely. And finally, remove the life from them itself. When we hear of nitrogen gas executions in our own time, we must remember the historical echo. It is not just another method of capital punishment. It is a state deciding that suffocation, denying the breath of life, is an acceptable tool of justice. Nitrogen gas causes death not through violence you can see, but through the invisible stealing of air. It is sterile, clinical, and designed to look clean on paper, but make no mistake, the end result is the same deliberate extinguishing of a human being. It can take more than 20 minutes for that human being to suffocate to death. Does that sound humane to you? Once a government normalizes killing in this way, it becomes easier to expand the definition of who deserves that fate. Fascist regimes exploited that very logic. If the state can kill murderers, why not traitors? Why not opponents? Why not those deemed subversive or unfit? The line between execution and political elimination grows thinner than we want to admit. In the book Understanding Willing Participants, Part 2, discussing the gas chambers used in the Holocaust and why so many Nazis were willing to participate in genocide, it reads, put simply, many Nazis believed extermination to be necessary. If they were somewhat involved in the killing process, at least they could tell themselves it was humane. The more desensitized we are to watching our government murder people because they believe those people deserve it, the more likely it is that this will happen again. How far are they going to go to determine who deserves to be murdered? They've already convinced 30% of the population that all immigrants are murderers, rapists, and criminals. Exactly what Hitler said about Jewish people in the 1930s to convince Germans that Jewish people were monsters and deserved to die. We must refuse to let our society slide further down this path. The value of a nation is not measured by how swiftly it kills those it condemns. It is measured by how fiercely it defends the humanity of even its most despised members. If we give the state the power to kill without compassion, we hand it the tools that past fascists have used to destroy freedom entirely. Let us not forget, every breath we take is proof of life, and life is proof of possibility. We must not let the state take that away in silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. You know, it's difficult every time I talk about this. It's horrific to recount what it was like. Before I do, I wanted to briefly say that when I testified before the Arkansas legislature on what this method actually looks like, it was clear that I knew more about the method than anybody that was on that committee, anybody that had sponsored that bill. Representative Wardlaw, who sponsored the bill, he thought that the mask that was used in Alabama was a simple oxygen mask. He said, oh, they're $2 a piece. Well, I spent, I think, right around $400 to show y'all today that this is not a $2 mask that was used in Alabama. I believe it's been used 5 times in Alabama. The same mask was used in Louisiana. And I'll tell you more about it in a second. I think the other piece that's important to talk about is there were committee members when I was, recounting the story I'm about to share with you, who were tearing up. They were upset that thought of this happening in Arkansas. And it wasn't 10 minutes later that they all voted to pass nitrogen hypoxia here in Arkansas. It shows us that we've taken the humanity out of the process. I want to share with you what a dehumanizing moment this is for Arkansas to even think about nitrogen executions. When Kenny Smith was executed back in January of 2004, I spent time as a spiritual advisor. I guess I should have said that earlier. I worked with guys all over the country who are facing execution, and I tell people that kind of my job is for the last 3 to 6 months of their lives, I become their best friend so that their best friend might be with them when they're executed. I've been in the chamber for now 10 different executions. My 10th was in June the 10th, Anthony Wainwright in Florida. Experienced 5 different states execution chambers, Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, Missouri, and Texas. And it's interesting that out of the 10, 9 have been lethal injection. There's only 1 that has been a nitrogen execution. And so I have a very clear picture of what a nitrogen execution looks like in comparison to a lethal injection. Nevertheless, I was with Kenny on the day of the execution, spent time with his family. I want to make it very clear, I oppose all execution. I believe that this statement pierces my heart and should pierce anyone's heart that claims to follow Jesus. Who would Jesus execute? I mean, my God, you're going to have to ask that question. So the day of Kenny's execution, I spent the day with him and his family. We got to the moment where it was time for him to go back. He goes back, and I am taken to another room. I sit there for a number of minutes, and then I'm taken back to him. We pray together, we read scripture together, and quite frankly, I was terrified. And the reason that I was terrified is because I had to sign a waiver that said if the state of Alabama gassed me to death, that I would not sue the state of Alabama. Doesn't that make you feel good about what you're about to experience? So, going into the chamber, there were oxygen monitors all around. And I think that's one thing that the state of Arkansas, the Department of Corrections, the Attorney General's office has lied to the people of Arkansas about. They're lying to the people of Arkansas, they're lying to their employees, they're the Department of Corrections. And what they're lying about is the fact that this is not a safe means of execution. Again, there were oxygen monitors all over the room. I bet there were probably I saw 24 oxygen monitors on the way in. Well, what that does is it measures whether or not there's a nitrogen leak based on the amount of nitrogen that's intended to be in the room on a normal day, normal basis. So I had no training whatsoever. If one of these things had gone off, I had no idea what it looked like. And so I was prepared in that moment. I think there might have been a couple of y'all that covered this, but my family and I, we had prayed together. I had sued the state of Alabama to provide guarantees with regards to my safety. And of course, how state government likes to do, trust us, just trust us, just trust us. And I had my bishop had come in, and he had given me the last rites of the church before I went in, and we also found out afterwards that there were corrections officers who also received the last rites of the church. We were all prepared to die. And it's because nobody knew what they were doing. Nitrogen gas is deadly. If there was a leak, by the time one of those monitors had gone off, we would have been able to get out of the room. I want to speak to the fact that when you put this mask, and I'll go ahead and we'll do more demonstration here in just a second. But when you put this mask on someone, this is the exact mask that was used in Alabama. This is the exact mask that was used in Louisiana. We know that because our good friends at the Associated Press and all of these wonderful outlets in Alabama and Louisiana have basically provided evidence that this is the mask. We also know that in Louisiana, in their litigation, they had to say what mask they had used or were going to use. It's this mask. We also, in Connecticut, the company that makes this mask is Allegro Industries Walter Technology. And so we have already gone to Connecticut, and we're pushing their legislature to pass a bill that says they will not allow anything that is used in Connecticut to be used in human executions. Which is another interesting piece. Veterinarians aren't even allowed to use nitrogen to kill people. And the reason is because it is considered to be inhumane for animals. Something we wouldn't use on dogs, we're trying to use here in Arkansas. Nevertheless, so when you put this mask on, and lucky y'all, I'm gonna let anybody who wants to try this on. Grant has already said he wants to go first. I won't hook the hose up to anything. But nevertheless, when you put this mask on, you have these silicone straps. And these straps have to be pulled back as much as possible. So when you look at this mask, I mean, this isn't the easiest thing to get on my face, for me to put on my face. Can you imagine putting this on someone who's rocking their head back and forth and doesn't want to put it on? That happens after you get somebody strapped down. You have, which of course is another interesting component, the strap down team. You have corrections officers who are forced to hold this person down until they can completely immobilize this person. What do you think that does to a human being when they go home and they have to hug and kiss their kids after strapping somebody down to kill them? So you put this mask on. This netting fits against the back of the head. And inside the mask, you have what is supposed to be a very tight seal. So I'm going to take a break there for a second. They put this on Kenny. I went back, saw him, we prayed together, and when I walk in the room, there's a dozen corrections officers. Alabama wanted all hands on deck for this moment. And so I prayed with them, and I was taken back out of the chamber, and then I was brought into the chamber for the actual execution. I was put, if you can imagine this being him being executed there, and this being the wall behind me. They had 3 panes of glass in Alabama. I go to the back, my bag is here, and I had to back up, and I came back and forth to Kenny. He was allowed to pray. They released one of these so he could be heard in his last statement, and so he could pray. I go back, and the second they turn the nitrogen on, it is not an understatement to say that all hell broke loose. Immediately, he begins to heave back and forth and back and forth. And every time he heaves, his face is slamming into this glass plate right here. So he's going like this, over and over and over and over. And so his face is shooting forward. And there's spit and saliva and all sorts of mucus and body fluids, probably sweat, on and on and on, coming out. And so every time he heaves, it's catching on the front of the mask. Well, this becomes a waterfall. Everything that's hitting inside here begins to drizzle down the mask. Part of the problem with this method, this mask and any other mask that you're going to be able to use, is that oxygen is going to be able to get in there. It doesn't matter how tight this is, there's still going to be oxygen that's able to get in. There's also going to be oxygen that was in the mask to begin with. So what you're talking about is not a pure nitrogen execution. There's no such thing as a pure nitrogen execution. Oxygen is going to be in the mask no matter what. So he begins to heave, and it was absolutely horrifying. I mean, this goes on for 8 minutes, and over, his hands and his skin clench up. He begins to shake all over his place. I have said many times, it was like there was a million ants underneath his skin, going every different direction, running into each other all over the place. As that's happening, everybody in the room, there were 2 guards in the room, and there was a regional director of prisons in the room. They were terrified. They had no idea. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And so they began to move towards the door of the execution chamber, which of course I'm sitting here like, damn, do I need to be moving too? Or are they like, is we have a leak, or what needs to be happening? In the room behind me were the state officials, folks from the Attorney General's office, also folks who would have come from the Department of Corrections. And I began to hear, stop, please, it's not going right, stop. And it's because everybody was terrified. I mean, it was absolutely, horrific. This goes on, the heaving lasts for 8 minutes. You could see his chest rising and falling. for at least 16 to 17 minutes, and he was not declared dead for 22 minutes. When you talk about what does this do to human beings, obviously it is a horrific and barbaric way to kill someone. It's torture, it's horrible. But you also have to think of what this is doing to the people who see it. Are we prepared to put our priests, our ministers, our imams, all of our different religious leaders, are we prepared to put them through this? Nightmares, can't sleep, think about this shit all the time. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about a peaceful, go into the dentist, put your head back kind of thing. We're talking about torture of the person, torture of the people who are involved, torture of the people that see it. Lastly, before I get down here, I wanted to say that the Associated Press, a number of other news agencies, we haven't seen a nitrogen execution that hasn't looked like this yet. Report after report, and some I know my friends, y'all probably don't like to look at other people's sources, but the AP reporter, Kim Chandler, who has seen every nitrogen execution in the state of Alabama, consistently has described 7, 8, 9 minutes of heaving and, just torture. The other piece I wanted to say before y'all pass, the state of Alabama says that this is involuntary. That, when you're suffocating someone to death, obviously this is what's going to happen. The thought that we can just dismiss torture by saying, this is what it is horrifying. So I'm going to sit here for just a second. I wanted y'all to see what this mask looks like on. And I also wanted to show y'all how oxygen is coming in and out. And this man right here is going to have a very welcome task, in that I'm going to get you a title once I get it. Okay. Obviously, most of them are not going to have a beard either, so.
Here's coming in. I mean, this should be completely closed out to any possible oxygen. We feel like it is done. It's not pure oxygen. That makes the suffering longer. See how you just breathing in here is causing it to clog up on the inside? Imagine we'll be sitting and heaving that kind of sitting here. Again, this is supposed to be airtight. I'm not supposed to be able to breathe. I mean, I'm not comparing I'm sitting here for 20 minutes, but I think you get my point. It's definitely not comfortable, I can tell you that. But again, I mean, you can see inside the mask. I'm having a difficult time seeing you.
And so, this is not what this mask, obviously. This is a respirator mask. Oftentimes you'll see masks like this on firefighters. But we have an interesting way, don't we, as a society, of turning things that are meant for good into things that are evil. I think lastly, I just wanted to show and say that we don't know which mass that Arkansas is going to choose. But what we do know is that when this passed the legislature, this is the mass that was cited. We also know that this is the mass that has been used everywhere else. So again, do we want the people of Arkansas to be responsible for suffocating their neighbors? Do we want to be responsible for suffocating our neighbors? To wrap us up, I wonder why I didn't see. To wrap us up, this space that you're in right now is where my church meets. It's a little bit more configured, but you know, one of the things that we often talk about is this notion of resisting evil. If I came up to any of y'all and put my hands around your neck and choked you until you had no more life in you, you would say that was evil. This is the exact same thing. You cannot moralize, you cannot make ethical, you cannot make righteous. Suffocating people. Thank y'all so much for coming. Do we have anybody that has any questions? I know we've talked a lot. But if anybody has any questions, they're more than welcome. Abe, if anybody has any questions on the live stream, y'all are more than welcome.
And people to put questions into the chat, members of the media as well. Jeff, please be sure to note that the next gas suffocation execution in the country is scheduled in Alabama next week. So that's a possibility as well. We'll be, you know, I'll share in the media, and it's been shared Hey,
Abe, we got some folks that have a question here. So let me go with that really quick.
Governor Sanders.
the next gas suffocation execution is.
What next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now, number one, the hope is that people will, you know, actually see what we're talking about. I mean, that's why, you know, it would been worth $4,000 for me to have this mask, because I wanted people to see that this is not just some we're not talking about something that's easy. We're talking about something that's difficult, and we're talking about something that is not just as easy as putting them. I mean, if it was that easy of just laying out, then everybody would. I mean, every prisoner would want that. I mean, every prisoner that had to choose something would want that. That's what I mean. But I think the second thing is we're going to continue to organize. We're going to continue to push. We've got a number of folks here who are part of organizations. And certainly we want to let this new lawsuit go forward. You know, 10 folks on death row who have said they're going to fight in the courts on it. But again, I think for me, for us, this is primarily about education. And I'm convinced that if people understand that this is not what it has been sold to be, then people are going to wake up and our next press conference ain't going to be able to fit in this room. And we might even fill those 800 seats in the sanctuary. I think, well, I was also going to say this. I think that Governor Sanders, I also hope that she will be educated. I mean, she clearly doesn't know what this thing is either. And you know, we're talking about killing folks. I mean, we ain't talking about like, you know, something simple. I mean, you know, pay raises or whatnot. I mean, I'm sure all state employees want a pay raise, but my point is, I mean, we're talking about killing people. And they don't know what they're talking about.
Have you tried to contact the governor?
Sure, I invited the governor to come to a execution in one of these other states. I mean, as Alabama, Louisiana, every time they've had one of these executions, they've brought other state officials in of people who are interested in doing nitrogen executions. It's almost, you know, this sort of strange show and tell amongst departments of corrections. But yeah, I've contacted the governor's office and said, hey, why doesn't the governor come and witness one of these? Well, she doesn't want to come and witness one of these because she's going to be afraid she's going to be scarred for life, just like I am. That's why she doesn't want to see one. And, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say their names, but I mean, repeatedly, reporters from all different outlets, from various public radio stations, from, you know, outlets in Louisiana. I keep on getting these phone calls for pastoral care. They want, of course, this is very, you know, very much off the record. Of course, they don't want this to be said, but they want to talk about how do I get through this? I can't sleep. This thing keeps happening. This person keeps heaving at me in my sleep. And it's like, well, you know, the state's not going to be providing any counseling. I think that the legislature, the governor's office, they don't know the hell that they have lost. They don't know what they have gotten into. And I think that I hope that they don't wait until they actually try it to find out. Anybody else? Abe, anybody on the live stream?
Oh, we don't have any Q&A, but I want to make sure that you look being next week in Alabama.
Yeah, we said
Can
that.
you hear me?
And also, you're freezing up, so.
I think we're good on this end.
Okay, well,
But
thank you.
ask our brother to hold that sign back up.
Yep.
All right, well, it looks like Jeff has ended the live stream there. I do want to thank everybody for being here. And also just, I'm going to share my screen real quick. This is the Death Penalty Action Facebook, webpage. And it is here that you'll find information about David Roberts, who's being scheduled to be executed next week. Of course, Kyle Bates in Florida by lethal injection. Also Curtis Wyndham by lethal injection in Florida on the 28th. And then by firing squad, Ralph Menzies in Utah on September 5th. That clemency hearing is happening today. And if you go on further down, this is where you can find our campaign on gas suffocation executions. And if you just click on that, then there's a petition sign that we deliver regularly in states that are carrying out executions by gas suffocation. And this is also where you can learn more about the gas suffocation executions and experience. There are links, and of course, also our corporate campaign to the company that makes, or that owns its subsidiary that makes that mask that Jeff was holding up. It's called Walter Surface Technologies. This is their phone number. We're inviting people to call them and ask them to disavow the use of their equipment in smothering prisoners with gas. So all of this can be found at deathpenaltyaction.org. In addition, hopefully in the link we put in the chat here on the Zoom, we put a link to the execution intervention project, which is run by Jeff and Noah. And Noah, do you want to add anything before we go?
Yeah, quickly, if you don't mind. Hi, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, who has been watching. I am Noah Dubois. I'm the Executive Director of EIP, the organization that supports Jeff's work. I witnessed my husband's execution in February in Texas. It was by lethal injection. He took 26 minutes to die, and, we were here watching him for 26 minutes, and it was horribly violent. and this is just lethal injection. And there is not one day that I don't thank God that this was not a nitrogen execution. I can't even imagine getting out of here and still, being a functional human being, having to witness this execution and witness my husband die that way. So yeah, I mean, I can talk 4 minutes, but I'm just gonna, keep it here. This is a horrible method of execution. Every execution is horrible and violent, but this is like beyond whatever we can imagine. Thank you, Abe, for the opportunity.
Of course, and with that, we want to thank everybody for participating and for attending today. And there's 2 executions next week in Florida and Alabama. We need to speak out against every single one. And in addition, do all that we can to prevent the resumption of executions in Arkansas. And that was a big part of the purpose of today's press conference.